I have a loud voice, so hopefully you all can hear me in the back. It's such an honor to be here with you tonight. I want to begin by thanking the organizers of this event, Dr. Colby and all the other providers, families, caretakers, and most importantly, the young patients who inspire us all. PCARES exists because children with autonomic disorders deserve better. They deserve research that seeks answers and providers who understand their complex needs. Tonight, we gather to celebrate the progress that's been sparked by this community, but most importantly, to commit ourselves to the ongoing work our patients so desperately deserve. Swimming has shaped my identity from the very beginning. The water was my sanctuary, the place where my imagination thrived, where I found peace with my thoughts, and where I discovered the meaning of hard work. I was water safe before I turned 1, which was a standard back in California, and by age 7, I was training full-time. I spent thousands of days in the pool, each one pushing myself to the limit. I love the water, but what kept me going all of those years was the satisfaction that came from the hard work, setting goals, and seeing progress. I set my sights high and steadily climbed the ladder of competition. During my collegiate career, as Dr. Colby mentioned, I became a 4-time American and NCAA record holder, 12-time NCAA national champion, 20-time All-American, and 6-time member of the United States national team. I competed in multiple Olympic trials, missing the team by just half a second in 2016. I was fortunate to train and compete alongside Olympians that you may have heard of, including Simone Manuel and Katie Ledecky, and many other athletes who continue to make headlines on the world stage. After my college graduation, I just had one swimming goal left, to make the United States Olympic team. So I decided to spend one more year chasing my dream. I began competing professionally, earning sponsorships, and joining a professional swimming league. I didn't know it then, but this next photo from December of 2019 captured the final race of my career. Just a few weeks later, in January of 2020, my world turned upside down. I had just returned from the Olympic Training Center, where many of my teammates joined for an annual New Year's training trip. While we were there, many of my teammates came down with a flu-like illness that wasn't the flu. I thought I had escaped with only mild symptoms, and like I always did, I continued to train through it. But when we returned home one morning at practice, my heart rate wasn't responding to my effort like it normally did. I counted only 60 beats per minute while I was actively swimming. I returned home to nap, hoping I'd feel better before afternoon training. But when I stood up out of bed, I collapsed. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, and I vividly remember sitting on the wood floor of my room, knowing deep down something was really wrong. What followed that moment were years of unexplained fatigue, lightheadedness, brain fog, and other symptoms that no amount of sleep, discipline, or training would overcome. Overnight, I went from training 6 hours a day as one of the top athletes in the world to struggling to complete daily tasks. Simple things like standing long enough to cook, going to the grocery store, or staying awake through a movie became challenges I had never imagined. I spent most of my days laying down, building up the energy to go to the bathroom or go to the door to pick up the food I had delivered. Soon after, at just 23 years old, I was forced to move home and relied on my family to take care of me full-time. It was clear that my body was rejecting any training I forced on it, but I was desperate to return to the water. I saved every ounce of energy that I had to occasionally attempt getting in the pool, which usually was followed by days or weeks of time in bed. When the 2020 Olympics were delayed due to the pandemic, I clung to the hope that maybe I would recover in time for a chance next year. Looking back, 2020 is clouded in my memory, a long and disorienting search for answers. In those early days, doctors didn't know what to make of my symptoms. Some blamed overtraining, weight changes, anxiety, depression, hormone imbalances, you named it. Several suggested I simply see a therapist, as we've heard over and over again tonight. Some outright dismissed me. One of the most painful assumptions came from a coach who implied that my symptoms were nothing more than Olympic nerves, that I was stepping back not because I was sick, but because I was too afraid to risk failing. Some of these individuals that accused me that it was all in my head had known me for years. They had seen me compete at world championships with a mononucleosis infection, break American records with the stomach flu, compete with torn tendons. But then, when I was struggling with something they couldn't see and something I didn't have data to prove, it must have been all in my head. I had no history of mental health challenges, and I have time and time again overcome obstacles in my career that built my confidence and my resilience. I knew this wasn't something I could meditate my way out of. I had a lot of people to prove wrong. And determined to get my life back, with the unwavering support of my family, I searched every corner of the health and wellness industry for help. I became a science experiment, handing over hard-earned money for questionable supplements, energy balance testing, and even explorations of trauma as the supposed cause of my symptoms. One doctor prescribed me ionized ocean water in glass vials to drink every morning with my coffee. Maybe he was onto something with the salt content, but mostly it was just overpriced fluids. I share the details of my somewhat ridiculous experience because it is not an uncommon story. Despite having access to resources, dozens of physicians across specialties, care through my university, care through Team USA, private insurance, and cash to pay for any promise of recovery, I was still left without options. By chance, I FaceTimed a family friend to catch up during the pandemic. The mother is a physician, and one of their daughters has POTS. She was able to recognize my symptoms almost immediately over the phone and recommended that I see their doctor. Because of his experience with other national team athletes, he agreed to see me. Dr. Peter Rowe, who you've heard about tonight, is a pediatrician at Johns Hopkins. He runs their chronic fatigue syndrome clinic and sees patients with POTS, other autonomic disorders, and related complex conditions. In less than half an hour, he was able to diagnose me with myalgic encephalomyelitis chronic fatigue syndrome, or MECFS, and postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which we later thought was likely triggered by a COVID infection and potentially the mono infection I had the summer before. The most important part of my meeting with Dr. Rowe was that he was able to reassure me that what I was experiencing was real. There was science behind it. He had seen cases like me before, even swimmers. He knew the right questions to ask, the right tests to perform, and not everything was normal, as every other physician had claimed. He had recommendations for my treatments based on his research and his past patients. With restored hope, I began trying to integrate medication and lifestyle changes and was able to see some progress. But it wasn't happening as fast as I needed, with the Olympic trials only 6 months away, and I still wasn't back in the water. In 2021, I had to face the reality that I would not regain my health or my life if I continued to pursue this goal. I also recognized that reaching my goal of qualifying for the Olympics required my full health. Sitting on a family friend's porch, I made the painful decision to retire from swimming, just weeks before the Olympic trials I had spent over 15 years preparing for. I took this photo to mark that moment, another turning point that changed the trajectory of my life. A few weeks later, I met Lewis, my now fiance, biggest cheerleader, and my caretaker on the days when my body gets the best of me. We wouldn't have crossed paths if I decided to keep swimming. His limitless approach to life and his encouragement helped me create a new future for myself. With Olympic trials quickly approaching and the public expectation that I would be there to compete, I decided to announce my retirement on Instagram. I included the details of my diagnosis and unexpectedly got a massive wave of messages from others who for the first time felt seen. Then with some research, I realized that there were millions of other patients like me, millions of patients disabled, unable to go to school, unable to work, and unable to find a doctor that was willing to stick by them. I had to do something about it. Lewis suggested I go to medical school. And inspired by my grandmother, sorry, I'm really emotional tonight, sister, and other family members in healthcare, I planned to become a nurse after retiring from swimming. I even applied and had been accepted to Columbia's Doctor of Nursing program. Another little change in plans occurred when Lewis and I took a romantic road trip down the California coast in a convertible. It must have been the distraction of love in combination with my brain fog that led me to forget to submit my deposit to secure my spot in the program. They rescinded my admissions offer. Initially, it was a crisis, but looking back, it was a sign. Another perfect opportunity for Lewis to encourage me to become a doctor. I hadn't prepared for that, and you don't just become a doctor, I told him. But with some extra encouragement, a call with a mentor and physician from my undergrad, and most importantly, knowing that the letters MD behind my name would allow me to better advocate for this patient population, I committed. The people that know me best thought this path suited my personality better anyways. And given my admiration for nurses and awareness of my own shortcomings, I can appreciate the jokes about doctor quirks and bedside manner. A few months later, after rushing to take the medical school entrance exam, putting an application together, I was accepted into Stanford School of Medicine, conveniently where Lewis was completing his PhD. In an effort to support patients while I completed my training, I founded Dysunderstood, a platform and now a nonprofit organization created to amplify patient voices and build community for those with misunderstood chronic conditions. The name Dysunderstood stemmed from my goal, to provide a space for patients with dysautonomia to feel understood. All of this brings me to where I am now, lucky enough to be healthy enough to train to become a physician. I also decided to pursue an MBA at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, where I'm learning about the healthcare landscape in which I will be practicing medicine, and mostly to reimagine sustainable care models for this patient population. I kept an open mind for the first through 3 years of medical school, considering different specialties to pursue. But through every setting and clinical rotation, I was consistently drawn back to and reminded of my passion for patients suffering from complex, misunderstood illnesses, especially the young ones. Their resilience was something I wanted to be around for the rest of my life. So I've chosen to pursue pediatric medicine. Pediatrics at its core is about protecting possibility. Pediatric medicine offers the unique opportunity to intervene early, to validate the experience of young patients, and to build a foundation for long-term health and dignity. But pediatric patients are at a disadvantage, as pediatric medical research is at least one step behind adult research. And this is important for this patient population because many autonomic disorders, as mentioned tonight, reveal themselves in adolescence. And being dismissed at such a formative age does not only derail health, but impacts self-esteem, education, and trust in the medical system. The patients that PCARES serves deserve the chance to dream, to learn, to play, and to grow into the fullest version of themselves. But to do that, they need all of us. Your support tonight and moving forward will fund vital research, expand clinical programs, and provide education to providers and resources that patients desperately need. It will mean earlier diagnoses, better treatments, and more children who feel believed and supported. Thank you for believing in these patients. Thank you for believing in this mission, and thank you for the privilege of sharing my story with you tonight.